Sharing your ideas with like-minded people or even the rest of the world is what will take you to places. But if you don't communicate your idea in the right way, no one will know of it. Worst case scenario, someone could steal this poorly communicated idea and claim it as their own. So how can one be articulate in the art of communicating without boring the audience? Hello and welcome to our channel, First Class Mind. In this video, I will tell you 6 mistakes that make you seem boring. So without further ado, let's get started. 1. Babbling. One of the main reasons why people seem to be boring to their audience is because they leave nothing out. All their ideas and bits of information come rushing out at one go, boring the audience half to death. This turns the interaction into quite an awkward one, forcing the listener to get out of the scenario ASAP. Babbling on is something that many end up doing too. This may be due to nervousness or lack of confidence. To avoid babbling, keep it short and simple. It's always best to narrate it in the form of a story. Another tip to avoid babbling would be to be more conscious of your speech, not only during important interactions, but also during regular interactions that take place on a day-to-day basis. It has been found that babbling is a sign of being heavily focused inward. This could be in a conversation or generally in life. To have shorter and snappier conversations, stick to being focused outward. This will help aid you in being less self-conscious and would definitely eradicate the chance of a verbal nonsensical babbling spew. Most importantly, this is all a learning process and won't happen overnight. It requires practice and determination to be able to speak consciously, so don't beat yourself over it if you ever do slip up. 2. Dragging on the topic. Another factor that causes the verbal interaction to turn into a boring one is by hanging on to the topic for too long. In simple terms, talking too much about the same points over and over again is not only repetitive, but drags on the conversation into one that is quite boring. Instead of doing this, one can transition from one topic to another gradually and at a well-spaced tempo. Keep the flow of the conversation going. If there arises a scenario in which things get awkward, turn the conversation into a lightened-up one and let go. Another way to avoid being repetitive is to talk about something you like your passion. Talking about something that one likes automatically brings out a natural flow in the conversation. But even if it's easy to talk about such topics, it is always important to be mindful while switching back and forth between topics. In short, flexibility in where you're taking your conversation as well as where you're willing to take your conversation to is very important. Apart from talking about one's passion, one can also indulge in light-hearted topics such as positive emotions as well as moments or stories that the person may have experienced. Doing this comes with a big plus point of the listener relating and connecting to you in some way. But even while doing this, it is important to keep it simple and to the topic without dragging it out. 3. Negative talks. Another thing that makes the conversation boring is if the conversation is negative. Many people tend to whine a lot through their communication while trying to put out a point. It's very important not to let your mood have an effect on the conversation that you're having. In fact, if you keep the negativity in your head and heart longer than it should be there, it tends to affect your entire day and tends to seep out into the various actions that you're involved in throughout the day. Some people love to thrive on negativity, and this is often reflected in the conversations that they have. This drives away quite a few people due to the negative environment that is created due to their conversations. We all are living lives where we are facing different problems. Indulging in negative conversations is not something that anyone has the time or patience to deal with. In fact, many people prefer to be around those who are positive. Maintaining positive energy sets the tone before the conversation even starts. This attracts people and makes them want to listen to you without getting bored. So keeping a smile and a positive attitude is quite attractive while having a conversation or any form of verbal interaction. Having a positive attitude also shows how enthusiastic one is. Speaking of enthusiasm, many have even stated that enthusiasm is quite contagious. So if you're filled with enthusiasm, so will the listeners. 4. Not listening. When we speak, our biggest concern is not to turn out boring and to be heard. We want people in front of us to actually listen to us and enjoy the conversation that's being had. But for us to be heard, we must first listen. Most of us tend not to listen to others, and this is one of the biggest mistakes we could ever make. Being a good listener is not a skill one develops overnight, it is something that comes with practice. In fact, the best way to improve this factor in your communication skills is by following the mantra, listen before you speak. Apart from listening to the verbal dialogue being spoken to you, you must also take note of the nonverbal cues such as the speaker's body language that they showcase. This will help you understand what the person is trying to say, and this could also give you tips on how you can make the conversation all the more interesting. This goes back to our previously mentioned point on how you have focus on an outward approach as opposed to an inward approach when it comes to listening as well as speaking. 5. Being self-absorbed. Now, the fourth mistake that many tend to make while having a conversation that makes it boring is when the speaker talks all about him or herself. This on its own shows what a bad listener the speaker is, and talking endlessly about themselves would force listeners to get up and walk away from such an environment. People want to be understood while finding a connection, so as a speaker, it's important to split the focus between talking about themselves and talking about others or things that may interest them. This will make the speaker seem powerful with his or her words and would also keep the interaction quite positive, enthusiastic, and exciting. At the end of the day, we're all humans and we're bound to ask our doubts, queries, and questions to our peers or other people. But while doing so, it is important to always ask what's relevant, and even when asking, doing so in an articulate way without deviating from the topic is very important. In order to avoid such a scenario, you may also make statements where you mix up both your own opinions as well as the opinion of those who you are communicating with. While doing so, make sure to be polite and not insensitive to the opinion of others, but at the same time, do not be worried about expressing your opinion and what you believe in. In fact, being proactive and open with your thoughts will definitely showcase you as a strong individual with a confident personality. Another important thing to note is that during a conversation, there may be pauses that could be quite awkward if they go on for too long. But sometimes, these pauses could be good as they give everyone time to think about what was just said and where to take the conversation forward from that point on. 6. Not sticking to the point. Now, here's one of the biggest mistakes that many people make while having a conversation that makes them seem bored. Not being in the moment and not giving our 100% to the conversation really shows in the kind of conversation that is taking place. Listening to the opposite person is a huge part of being present. Be focused on what is being spoken about in the conversation. Be alert and gather all your input on it before saying out loud. Think before you say it so that you don't regret what you have said. Let the conversation pave its own path and evolve gradually. Being mentally relaxed helps the conversation sprawl out in a positive and effective manner. In fact, speaking about experiences and other related scenarios with an open and positive mind could be great, despite the topic being a negative experience that you may have endured in the past. If you're looking for ways to be more focused and connected to the conversations that you are part of, invest in paraliminals as they have proven to help many. You could also try out various breathing exercises to gain the focus you wish for. How we think in our headspace matters a lot. Be sharp yet witty so that the conversation has an equal balance of seriousness and humor to keep the conversation interesting. Lastly, smile. A smile can change the whole tone of the conversation and truly does wonders in improving the quality of verbal interaction.